It's known as the Great Firewall, and it's what the Chinese government uses to censor the internet inside its country and block access to select foreign websites. Now, a leak of tens of thousands of documents shows that a little-known Chinese company with ties to that firewall is exporting those tools to other countries in Africa and Asia, including Myanmar, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and Ethiopia. Recently, I spoke with Ziyi Yang, a senior writer at Wired who has been following the story. Ziyi Yang, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, what do we know about the release of these documents itself? What does it tell us?
So this is a trove of over 100,000 documents that came from an anonymous leak. And collectively, we see that these documents coming from the Chinese company Gij Networks shows that they have very advanced capability to monitor the internet traffic that goes into a whole country, and that they're trying to sell, and they have succeeded in selling this technology to some foreign governments.
And this technology, we believe, also undergirds the Great Firewall itself. So let's take a step back and talk about how that firewall itself works.
Anyone of the 1.4 billion people in China right now, if they're trying to access internet through their laptops, through their mobile phone, they will have to go through this filtering system that decides what information they can get and they cannot. It means that blocking certain websites that you cannot see. It means filtering out the results that you get on search engines. So it's really a very big infrastructure that makes sure people can only see the content that the government deems acceptable to be seen.
And this trove of documents reveals the extent to which this company Gij is part of this infrastructure. But of course, there's also information about the way in which it's selling this technology to other countries. So what do we know specifically about that part of their endeavor?
What we know so far is that Gij is a company that mostly operates like any other commercial cybersecurity company. It has hardware and software products that it sells to foreign governments, and it helps them makes a very user-friendly software to monitor the traffic coming into their country.
And what does this company say in response to criticism that it's engaging in this with other authoritarian countries?
I don't think the company has responded to what we found this time. But over the years, this company has been mostly low profile. It hasn't really been the company that people talk about when they talk about Chinese Great Firewall. But we are seeing that they actually have quite advanced capabilities. And I'm sure we'll see them in news headlines a lot more in the future.
And can you tell us about the connections that one of Gij's shareholders has to the creation of the Great Firewall?
One thing we found is that back in 2019, the second year that Gij was founded, Fang Bingxin, which is a scientist in China, was actually one of the investors in the companies. And this is the guy who also created the very first prototype of Chinese Great Firewall and was credited as the father of China's Great Firewall. And this might be one of his attempts to commercialize that kind of technology and sell it to foreign governments.
Much of this is very opaque, but what do we know about the strategy here of reaching out to particular countries? Is China and or Gij specifically courting other countries with records of human rights abuses?
Well, what we do know is that they are targeting companies who already have a will in censorship. For example, before Gij comes in, the Pakistani government actually has worked with other companies from the Western Hemisphere to build their own internet censorship system. But then those companies are sanctioned and they have to withdraw from those local businesses in Pakistan. And that's when Gij find an opportunity to come in. They basically marketed their technology to repurpose the hardware that Pakistan government already have and use them to build this more comprehensive, more updated censorship infrastructure. And what we see is that the Pakistani government has agreed to do that.
And there is some data linking specific countries to using the technology already, but what do we know about other countries that might also be seeking it?
One thing we found this time is that Gij Networks has been recruiting more engineers to maintain its infrastructure overseas. And in one specific recruiting post, they specifically named 5 countries that engineers might have to travel to. And those are Pakistan, Bahrain, India, Malaysia, and Algeria. But we also know that Gij has been hiring translators who can speak Spanish and French. So it's fair to say they're probably going to target a lot more countries out there.
The documents also show that Gij is providing services within China to certain provincial governments, including in Xinjiang, where the government is accused of committing human rights abuses against the Uyghur Muslim minority. What do we know about that part of the project?
I think this is one of the more surprising findings from this leak. we're seeing is that the experience of building a commercialized product of censorship is also helpful within China. It's also attractive to provincial government within China. For example, in Xinjiang, there will be counterterrorism, there will be how to deal with the ethnic minorities within this province, but also in some other provinces in China, it could be detecting and combating financial scams.
And what does this tell us about the way that Chinese corporations work on behalf of the Chinese government's aims?
I think this really demystifies a lot of the ideas about the Great Firewall because it seems it's so capable, it has to be built by the government. But in fact, a lot of the things in there can come back to commercialized operations.
Is there anything we can deduce about China's end game here in terms of its geopolitical strategy?
I think China very much like other countries to adopt a kind of internet management system that's similar to China's. Because one thing we're seeing right now is that countries are taking sides when it comes to how will internet look like in the next decade. And China, with its Belt and Road Initiative and with its other big foreign investment projects, are trying to get more countries to be on its side. And what Gigi offers, I think, is one of the things that other governments actually are interested in because a lot of governments want to have more control over what their citizens are seeing. And so this is part of the offer that China can provide to other countries to join their side.
So interesting. Se Yi Yang with Wired, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ali.